Welcome to True Tall Tales, where reality is stranger than fiction. My name is Sonny Boy, and welcome to another episode of True Tall Tales. Alright potties, before we dive into today's topic, let me take you a trip down memory lane. A dark, disturbing, dairy-based memory. Cast your minds back to 2008. Kevin Rudd was Prime Minister of Australia, the iPhone 3G was the height of technology, and Sydney was rocked by a scandal so grotesque, so unhinged, that it still haunts us to this day. I'm talking, of course, about the Coogee Bay Hotel poo ice cream incident. For those of you blissfully unaware, allow me to ruin your day. Two families just trying to enjoy a quiet evening out were served ice cream laced with human poo. That's right, some unhinged individual decided that the best way to settle a noise complaint was to weaponize soft serve. Now, did they ever catch the culprit? Nope. No fingerprint, no DNA testing, just a city left forever changed, side-eyeing their desserts with a new level of suspicion. To elaborate more to my listeners who don't know about this infamous poo scandal, basically two families say that staff at Coogee Bay Hotel served them ice cream laced with human poo at the Coogee Bay Hotel in eastern Sydney on October the 5th. They say they received the dessert free of charge after complaining they could not hear the televised rugby league grand final footy match over the pub's music. And now, 16 years later, it seems Sydney's mysterious poo bandit has made a comeback. But this time, they've moved on from hospitality. Can't even say this word. Got so much poo in my head. This time, they have moved on from hospitality and set their sights on real estate. That's right. This week's episode is all about the tactical turds turning Sydney's property market onto an absolute circus. Forget interest rates, forget dodgy unquoting. The biggest threat to home buyers now comes in the form of unflush sabotage. So strap in and flash twice and let's get into it. Now, I know Australia's housing market has been cutthroat for a while, as we can all feel it, and we all know this, but today we're talking about a new strategy so unhanded, so foul, so downright putrid that it makes unquoting look like an awesome community raffle. Yes, friends, people are leaving strategic, unflushed poops in their open homes. This isn't a joke. This isn't a metaphor for how the property market is in the toilet. No, we're talking about actual, real-life rogue turds being deployed as a potential competitive home buying tactic. You can't even make this shit up. Alright, so let's start with Exhibit A. A Sydney homeowner who, after an open house, returned to find what could only be described as a surprise performance piece in his toilet bowl. At first, he accused his wife, the poor wife, understandable, as martial trusts only go so far in these situations. But when she passionately denied the crime, the mystery deepened. Then it happened again, after the next open home. That's when the conspiracy theories started. Was it disgruntled buyer venting their frustration at the Sydney housing market by staging a one-man protest in the bathroom? Was it a real estate agent making their territory in a savage new industry trend? Or my personal favourite, was it a buyer trying to sabotage the competition by making the house smell like a festival portaloo? Because let's be real, Sydney's housing market is so dire that a well-placed stench bomb might just be shave a few $100,000 off the asking price. And it's not just home sales, it's happening to renters too. One poor tenant, after scrubbing his apartment cleaner than an operating theatre, got a call from his rental agency saying that they'd be deducting $350 from his bond because the state of the toilet. A toilet he hadn't used since cleaning day. Now look, I don't know what kind of wizardry they're doing with the $350 cleaning bill for a toilet. For that price, I'd be expecting the toilet to be blessed by the Pope and then you can lick the inside of the bowl. Like, that is crazy that they're charging $350 for that, by the way. Like, real estate's so annoying. The best part is that the tenant was never going to go back to clean it himself, because at that point he figured it had to be the real estate agent's doing. Maybe it was the morning coffee hitting at an appropriate time. We've all had coffee poo. We know what that's like. You have a coffee, cheeky cigarette, boom, activate your poo. Or maybe it just may be another tactical turd left by a potential renter hoping to scare off the competitors. And now I have to ask, does this work? I mean, I always assumed the worst part of house hunting was dodgy real estate agents and skyrocketing prices, not dodging landmines in the loo. But if this is a legitimate strategy, then what's next? Renting a toddler to cry through an inspection? Hiring an actor to stand in the kitchen and announce that there's a ghost or there's a problem? Where does this madness end? Honestly, the Sydney rental market is so cooked right now that even an unflushed surprise isn't enough to put people off. One renter straight up said, I would doubt even if a rogue turd would deter anyone. And you know what? She's right. People are so desperate for housing that they'd sign a lease in a literal sewerage plant if it meant that having a roof over our heads, which is really, really sad. That's what it's gotten to in Australia, and especially Sydney, for anyone that's listening to this from Sydney. So at the end of the day, it seems like real estate has entered its biological warfare phase. Forget interest rates. The biggest obstacle to home ownership is now someone else's digestive system, which is wild. So to all the buyers, renters, and real estate agents out there, stay strong, stay sharp, and for the love of everything good, flush before you dash. This is a good segue for a true tall tale that I had when I lived with one of my best mates years ago in Bondi Beach with Liam. And I remember we moved into this big house, I'd say. It was an apartment building, but it was huge. And no one else lived in the apartment next to us, and no one else lived underneath us. So we basically had the whole place to ourselves, if you get what I mean. We're the only one in that apartment building. Massive lounge room, massive balcony. It was wild. And as you know, this is before Bondi Beach was cool. Anyway, we remember signing the lease, and the real estate called me and said, we signed the lease already for whatever they advertised the rent for. And she contacted us the next day and said, you must be some of the luckiest renters in Sydney. And I was like, why? Like, what happened? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you never get real estate saying good news like that. And she said, well, the business that owns that, it wasn't a person that owned the apartments, it was an actual business. The business that owns the building forgot to up the rent of what they advertised it for. So by law, because you signed the contract already, we actually have to give it to you at the price of what it used to be. And I'm talking like it was dirt cheap. Like I can't even make this up, but I'm pretty sure it was like $290. And that's between two people for Bondi Beach. So you do the maths. For a 2-bedroom apartment in Bondi. So, and we signed the lease for a year as well. So we're like, yes, fuck yeah, let's get fucked up. And so we lived there for a year, and it was amazing, and no one lived in the building. So as you can imagine, we're in our early 20s, we're having parties. Like, we were the party house. Like, any person that knows me and Liam that's listening to this has probably been to one of our old school house parties in Bondi Beach, and so much happened in that place. And I'm so glad I got to live like that, and so many friends that we had there, and we had a punk band that lived there, and just the list goes on of what happened to that place. I remember at one stage we took all of our furniture out of the house one day and like piled it into Liam's room in the hallway so we could like get DJs to play in like different rooms of the house and stuff, and had house parties like to that extent. Like, it was correct. People would rather go to our house for these house parties than go clubbing. Like, that's how well known our house parties were. And I'm not trying to horn my own flute, toot my own horn, whatever the say. I'm so bad at sayings, by the way. Someone needs to buy me a book of sayings because I'm terrible at them. Toot my own horn, that's it. So anyway, where I'm going with this is we ended up living there for, I'm going to say 3 to 4 years. I can't remember, but it was an amazing place, and we always knew that it's not going to last this long. And I think we got the same rent. No, they did up our rent, but not much by the year after and stuff. And then it was the third year. And then we worked out that the business was selling it, and they were going to sell the whole building. We're like, no, this is so annoying, because we could have never have neighbors complaining about us because we lived in the whole building. No one else lived there. So we could never get like neighbor complaints. So we knew it was going to be finished. Then we had to like every Saturday morning, which was so hard for people in their early 20s taking drugs and partying, to wake up and clean the house. So we knew that they would have, buyers coming over. So real estate's like, you got to vacuum the house and make it all nice and stuff. Like, oh my God, just like, give me a bong. Give me a bucket bong. No, I'm joking. And yeah, so we had to get up every Saturday morning, and we'd have buyers coming in. We're like, well, the moment someone buys it, like, we're gone. We're out of here. Like, we don't want this to be finished. I think this happened in the third year now that I'm like, you know, getting my fingers and going back into my memory box in my brain. And in my room, which was massive, by the way, I had a massive balcony as well. It was such an old building as well. I had pigeons that lived in the roof of my balcony. So not in my roof of my house, but in the roof of my balcony, if that makes sense. And there was a little bit of a hole on my balcony, so they would shit and the shit would go on the concrete, if that makes sense. I also had a fireplace in my room, and I also had a fireplace in our lounge room. So I remember that the buyers would come over the real estate, and Liam and I would just be, on our best behavior and like clean the house and stuff. And then buyers would come and they'd be like, oh, like, what's that noise? I'm like, oh, it's just the pigeons that live in the roof. They only live in the balcony. And they're like, oh, there's pigeons? I'm like, yeah, they're in the roof of the lounge room and then the roof of my room as well. And I go, sometimes they poo and their feathers come down in the fireplace, and I see the poo come down and the feathers come. I said, you get used to it though. I usually just hide the vacuum underneath my bed and just vacuum the feathers up and clean the poo if they poo. I said, you kind of get used to it. And they're like, oh no. And they're like, have they done something about this? I'm like, yeah, they've brought the experts in and, to get rid of them and stuff. But I said, what do they say about pigeons? They're the rats of the sky, aren't they? They could just keep coming back and you can't get rid of them. So yeah. And Liam and I used to say these to all these people that were like trying to buy the building. So, well, technically, now that this article that I, just talked about before about the rental market in Sydney and sabotaging, we were the OGs. Well, we weren't, because people have probably done this in the past, but back then we were sabotaging our own place that we didn't want to leave so people wouldn't buy it. And it worked. We got like another year out of it. Like, people were just not buying this place. They were not buying it. They just were not interested. Like, it was a big building. It was kind of old. It was kind of warehousey. So we got another year out of that. So my true tall tale is, it's just so funny that it's crazy of like what you do. It's so like a TV show or something that you just create these like scenarios like, hey, going, yeah, like playing it down. Like, it's okay. You get used to it. Like, we're playing the innocent and things like that. So no one would buy it. Oh, that's so crazy. Like, now that I'm thinking back about that. Anyway, a year after, it ended up getting bought, but before they sold it, they actually did it up, and it took them ages. They couldn't knock it down because it was a historical building, but they had to, they basically just like knocked all the walls down and, did inside and everything. It was complete. Like, you see it now when this is like a bloody $5-6 million, probably more than that. This is probably like $20 million, $15 million place if it's like 4 different apartments and stuff. I don't even know how much it would be, but it would be a lot because it was on Bondi Road. It was walking distance to the beach. So crazy. And anyway, that was my true tall tale about sabotaging our place so we didn't have to move out. And that's it for today's episode, listeners. If you have a similar open home horror story, let me know. I will read the best one next time. And remember, potties, Sydney real estate stings, but hopefully your next inspection won't. My name is Sunny Boy. You're listening to True Tall Tales. I'll see you next Tuesday. Peace out. Bye-bye.